Despite his relatively short screen time, the recruiter is one of Squid Game's most interesting and psychologically deep characters that appears in the series. And while he plays a relatively minor role in the first season, in the latest season of Squid Game we really get an unpacking of his background, psyche, motivations, and ultimately his philosophy. So today we're going to cover everything you need to know about the recruiter's life and what insights you can derive from his twisted and maniacal character. Minor spoilers ahead. The recruiter is initially introduced as just that, a recruiter that finds people down on their luck in major debt and looks to recruit them to the Squid Game, a battle royale death game among highly in-debt individuals with a grand prize of 45.6 billion won or $30 million. To lure the targets in, he challenges them to a children's game called Dakji, giving them cash if they win and slapping them across the face if they lose. Essentially having the target exchange their pride for money. And pay attention to the nature of this game because it really plays into the recruiter's larger philosophy. In Season 2, Episode 1, the recruiter explains to the main character how he rose to his current position, starting out as a lowly circle guard in the Squid Game, burning the bodies of the losers, then eventually rising the ranks and obtaining a gun, where he was forced to shoot his father as he had been eliminated from the Squid Game. It shouldn't be a surprise that you can't go through these experiences without facing severe psychological damage. To be a guard in the Squid Game that kills and disposes of the bodies of the losers, one needs mental detachment while doing the job. These are not people, they're nothing but trash. And while some degree of detachment is necessary for most jobs, for a job like this, individuals can develop dissociative identity disorder. The recruiter is mentally ill. To be a part of the Squid Game organization day to day, he has to disassociate himself from his base humanity, developing a new identity that sees those in debt as not human, but rather trash or insects. An identity that ultimately adopts a form of twisted utilitarianism, a philosophy that states society should be designed around maximizing total societal well-being even at the cost of individual suffering. For example, under utilitarianism, killing one person to save two would be a worthy and moral decision, especially if the person killed was a negative contributor to society, like someone in debt or a criminal. In fact, it could be argued that simply killing negative contributors to society with nothing in exchange is still a net positive and therefore should be done. So to survive in his role, the recruiter uses this borderline psychopathic philosophy and adopts the lens that those in debt have been and will continue to be negative contributors, and therefore they should be eliminated/killed, treated no better than termites trying to damage the home that is our society. That's how he can function as part of the Squid Game organization, killing and disposing of trash, and that's why he can make two insects play a cruel game of Russian roulette. Ask yourself, how bad have you ever felt about killing a mosquito on your arm or even flooding an anthill? Now, there are obviously issues with this philosophy, such as the fundamental value of human life and the actual definition of what a negative contributor means. But nevertheless, sometimes to survive a situation, one must forcibly justify a philosophy to themselves, or in the recruiter's case, develop a whole new identity with principles that aligned with his actions. And there's been some analysis calling the recruiter a natural-born psychopath, claiming that he didn't adopt this philosophy, he was simply born that way. But I'd have to disagree. In fact, he gives us a peek into his base humanity through bread and lottery, the name of the episode and the game he plays with the homeless during his free time. A game where he offers someone living on the street a choice between a piece of bread and a lottery ticket. At face value, this is just a weird little game. But what the recruiter is looking to do is validate a thesis in line with his philosophy. A thesis that states the lower echelon of humans can't help but take the greedier, less principled option. They can't avoid the allure of a lottery ticket to feed their hungry stomachs. They can't refuse petty cash to maintain their dignity. They can't exit the Squid Game to save others' lives. That's why they're trash, their mindset. And as he suspects, try after try, the homeless repeatedly took the lottery ticket. The trash will always take the greedier option. That's why they are where they are. That's why they're homeless. That's why they're in debt. That's why they're in the Squid Game. And ultimately, that's what keeps them as trash and a net negative to society. But the recruiter does feel some disdain for this claim, because deep down he does naturally value human life. And you see this at the end of his bread and lottery game, where he ultimately lashes out and expresses his frustrations by stomping on the bread not taken. So underneath that psychopathic utilitarian recruiter that conducts the games, there exists another, more human side of the recruiter that's disappointed by the validation of this philosophy. The side to the recruiter that still respects the intrinsic value of human life despite the philosophy and principles he needs to take on for his job. And this leads us to what I would deem the best scene in the second season of Squid Game: Russian roulette between the recruiter and our main character Gian. The two play a game of Russian roulette with each other, and the recruiter poses his utilitarian philosophy, that the Squid Game participants are trash and and deserve to die. While Gi-hun poses the counter, life is inherently valuable. Even if one is in deep debt, even if one is a criminal, there's still value in human life. While exchanging trigger pulls with each other, the recruiter taunts Gi-hun, saying that he isn't special, he won the game out of luck, and Gi-hun is still trashed like the rest of the Squid Game participants. The recruiter taunts that Gi-hun won't pull the trigger on himself. Instead, he'll choose the greedier and less principled option. He'll break the rules and turn the gun just like the trash of society would. Just like the homeless choose the lottery tickets and the Squid Game participants choose the money. But ultimately, Gi-hun does pull the trigger on himself, survives, and responds to these taunts in kind, calling the recruiter a dog, and I'd liken that to the trash or insect analogy, telling the recruiter that when it comes down to it, he isn't better than the homeless people he plays with or the Squid Game participant. Like a dog, like an insect, like trash, whatever you want to call it, Gi-hun is trying to level the recruiter with the people that he views as trash. After all, turning the gun is probably what most people would do. It's what I would do. It's probably what you would do. It's what all the homeless people would do. It's what all the people the recruiter killed over the years would do. So Gi-hun's claim is that the recruiter is no better than anybody else. And so the recruiter contemplates. And in this still, you can clearly see both identities of the recruiter. On the left side, the principled utilitarian exterior that draws the line between himself and the trash of society, and on the right side, his inner humanity, acknowledging that he is scared to die just like the homeless and the Squid Game participants. But in the end, he sticks with his ideology, drawing a line between himself and the trash. He turns the gun on himself, proving that he is better than the lower echelons of society. He follows the rules of the game, and you might be able to call it a moral victory for him. I think it's an interesting mental exercise at times to ask yourself what it would take for you to violate your principles. Would it be just some persuasion? Would it be money? Would it be your life on the line? In the case of the recruiter, not even his life was enough for him to violate his principles. In the end, he would rather take his own life than acknowledge the trash and the countless he's killed over the years as human. You could say he was facing death whether he pulled the trigger or not, in one sense literally, but in another way, if he didn't pull the trigger, he'd sink himself to the same level as his deceased father and all those he'd killed and burned over the years. And I just don't think that's something he could live with. So definitely a tragic character within Squid Game, but really amazed that in his short screen time, Gong Yu was able to inspire so much among a large audience. If you're still watching, thanks for sticking around, and I'll see you in the next one.